Hello, everyone. Good evening. Welcome to our study session this evening for the North Shore School District. Tonight, we're going to be speaking to goal number 5, ready for lifelong success after graduation, which states each student graduates from high school with the habits for post-secondary success, productive citizenship, and lifelong learning. And Dr. Reed, would you please lead us?
Yeah, thank you, President Swain. It's my pleasure this evening to have our regional assistant superintendents, our executive director of racial and educational justice, and our chief leadership and strategy officer, Dr. Tracy Malloy, joining us this afternoon. And the 4 regional assistant superintendents are in this presentation led by our South Regional Assistant Superintendent, Heather Miller. In goal 5 and the presentation, Dr. Bigelow will be supporting the presentation from our racial and educational justice lens. And our other 3 remaining assistant superintendents, David Wellington, Obadiah Dunham, and Michael Tolley, will be filling in key points on the presentation. I want to remind the board that I did provide an updated PowerPoint Saturday. As in October, we continue to get updated data from OSPI on graduation. So I'm going to turn the presentation over to, I believe, Heather Miller, and Siobhan Frazier, my executive assistant, will help us move through the slides. So Heather, I believe you're up.
Thank you, Dr. Reed, and good evening to school board members. And we are looking forward to presenting this information tonight to all of you and to the public that is watching this presentation. As Dr. Reed said, the information does continue to be updated and still even will be updated a little bit further this week, as the final deadline date for the class of 2020 to file with OSPI is Friday, October 30th. So we'll be doing another update later this week. So the numbers will even be, you'll see that on a few slides, we have them in a blue color. Those numbers will again be updated next week. And so we can get those updated information to you. We've divided the presentation between the 6 of us so that we can have hopefully a good flow and not too choppy to the presentation this evening. And I'm going to turn it over at this point to Dr. Chris Bigelow to start us off.
So Heather, if I could insert before Dr. Bigelow comes on that we keep talking about updated data, but that means it will only get better as more kids complete either incompletes or final course. So the data will look likely better a month from now than it does even now. Is that correct?
Yes, that would be correct.
All right, thank you.
Hello, everyone. Well, this time I can see everyone. I think the last time we did this, I couldn't see anybody. So at least I can see you. And I know, Jackie, you had a new hairstyle, I think you talked about last time. So it's good to see everyone. Anyway, I'm Dr. Chris Bigelow, Executive Director of our Racial and Education Justice Department. And we are here to present Goal 5, ready for lifelong success after graduation. We have a whole team today here, and there's a reason behind that. The best equation for our students' long-term success after graduation require all of us working closely together towards a common goal of helping students become lifelong learners in their pursuit of knowledge for either personal or professional reasons. And we want students to leave our district highly qualified to be productive contributors to their communities. So on slide 2 here, I want to share with you who's going to be presenting what. This is the agenda. Tracy Malloy will be presenting on increased percentage of 9th grade students on track for graduation. And that's an important goal. Keeping 9th graders on track to graduate is extremely important because students who are on track for 9th grade are 4 times more likely to earn a diploma than those who fall off track. Dave Wellington will be presenting on ready for lifelong success after graduation, an increasing percentage of students who demonstrate acquisition of practical skills and disposition for life after high school. OB will be presented on increasing percentage of students who graduate on time. Mike Tolley will be talking about decreased high school diploma dropouts, increased percentage of students involved in activities aligned to their college career or post-high school plan, and increased percentage of post-high school graduates entering high school without the need for remedial classes. Slide 3. So the purpose is to update you on Goal 5, and show you the work that we are doing as a district to make sure all of our students are prepared to be successful adults. In working with Tony Wegner this year, he talked about in today's world, receiving only a high school diploma may not be enough. It's becoming more and more important that students receive a high school diploma that puts them on track to graduate prepared to immediately enter post-secondary education or the workplace. And so this does lead to them being successful adults. Also, slide 4 here, part of Goal 5 talks about equity. It says part of Goal 5 is what equity means, and it states, I'm just gonna read what it says in Goal 5 here. Each student receives equitable access to experiences crucial for success in college and beyond, and meets or exceeds Washington State college and career readiness graduation requirements. So when we talk about equity in education, it really is a measure of achievement, fairness, and opportunities in education. And that means achieving equity for all students. Students, I would say this, equity has become a formidable opponent, but we must continue to examine those barriers that gets in the way of segments of our population not successfully making that transition from high school to college or career readiness. And we have to continue to eliminate those barriers and equities in the system. I think COVID this year, has opened our eyes up to many inequities in the system. And I'm going to touch on that in a few minutes more here. But last year we did a data analysis for Dr. Stephen Garrett. He presented us with data that showed Washington State is 49th in the country of students of color leaving our system ready for college or taking courses that would put them on track for college. Along with many inequities in our system, the pandemic has highlighted, this also highlight the importance of this data. The quality of education that students receive directly correlates with their quality of life years down the road. In fact, it truly could mean, and Dr. Reed and I talked about this, life or death, and that's not meaning to be dramatic, but it really is. That's a true statement. If you look at COVID itself, people of color and low income are dying from this disease at a disproportionate rate. The reasons are not really that complex. It comes back to education. People of color overrepresented in service industry jobs that require them to be, at work despite outbreaks in their communities. And because their jobs are considered essential or can't be done remotely, which we in the room have that advantage of working from home and being able to avoid public interaction, many of these jobs require them to interact with the public. There are also barriers to getting health care, such as the lack of health insurance and not being paid when missing work to get care. And they are far more likely than other groups to live in high density populated housing, making it difficult to practice social distancing to prevent infection. All of these things place, our groups furthest away from justice at the forefront of the pandemic. Higher education has the power to change that, which is why this goal is so important, as it has done for all of us in this meeting here. We have the luxury of being able to work in a safe environment. Goal 5 is such an important goal because education beyond high school has the power to shape, students' future, and more resources available to them, the better their quality of life in years to come. For this reason, it is crucial for us to address any barriers starting at K-12 for all of our students, make sure that being ready for lifelong success after graduation. This is something that Raz and I have been working on, and we're going to continue to truly examine this the rest of this year. In fact, it's a standard agenda item, every time that we meet now. So this data to me, as I explained to Raz, is very personal. It's something that I want us to continue to look at, examine. We had a long talk about it this morning in cabinet, and we're going to continue to look at this. And on that, I'm going to turn it over now to Tracy Malloy.
Thank you, Dr. Bigelow. If we could go to the next slide, please. So the next set of presentations by all of us are going to address each of the measures that are embedded in Goal 5. And when we think about being ready for lifelong success after graduation, we're focusing on each student being ready to graduate from high school with the habits for post-secondary success, for productive citizenship, and lifelong learning. Next slide, please. Last year, we talked about what it means, what goals or habits that we expect of our students. And as we consider the importance of building students' capacity to be productive citizens who are ready for success beyond high school, what we're really talking about is helping students cultivate habits of mind. And habits of mind are dispositions that are skillfully and mindfully employed by people when they're confronted with problems. And when people use the habits of mind that they have cultivated in themselves, they are prepared to tackle problems when solutions might not be readily apparent. So when we think about the habits of mind that are important for high school students and for graduates of high school, the four habits of mind that we have identified as being essential are goal orientation, self-responsibility, time management, and teamwork. And the way in which North Shore supports students to develop these habits of mind is done in a variety of ways. For example, we teach students how to use planners. We help them learn how to keep track of assignments. We help them follow through on the obligations as members of the classroom or school community. We teach them about how to be planful and mindful about the things they do. Additionally, we engage students in thinking about the behaviors that will support their learning, and we encourage them to take responsibility for their actions. And finally, we encourage students to collaborate with their peers on assignments as well as on common goals. So there are a myriad of ways that you would see in our schools, whether or not we are in person or in distance learning classrooms, that we're helping students develop habits of mind that are done as early as when students are in the elementary school. Next slide, please. Specifically, as students get ready for high school, in 8th grade, they're introduced to Naviance, and Naviance is an interactive program that provides students with the way for them to think about college and career readiness. It's web-based. Students learn that there are a variety of tasks that are going to help them navigate through what will be required of them to successfully graduate and be ready to enroll in a post-secondary program, whether that post-secondary program is one that is at a four-year college or university, whether that program is a career preparation program, whether they choose to go into military service. Naviance is that place where they begin to kind of formalize their thinking and where many of those habits of mind wind up getting applied. In Naviance, there are 12 essential tasks that must be completed by any student prior to graduation. And these 12 tasks are listed on the screen. Students complete a variety of surveys. They engage in activities that help them explore their career interests. They learn about their own strengths and what that means in terms of how those strengths can get leveraged into a potential career. They also explore different programs that are post-secondary programs, such as colleges and universities, and career preparation programs that they might be interested in pursuing as part of their career path. Students also, through Naviance, begin to explore how to support an interest in post-secondary work, meaning that they look at what types of financial aid applications are available to all students. They complete a FAFSA application, and they also begin to look for scholarships as part of their Naviance experience. They also have to create a resume. And they must complete, as I said, all 12 of these activities before they are ready to graduate. And while students are exploring their strengths, their interests, identifying careers that they might be interested in learning more about, and as they begin to put together all of these artifacts that are a part of this high school and beyond plan, they continue to develop and refine those habits of mind that will contribute to their ultimate success. What it takes for students to complete each one of these tasks are those habits of mind that we've just talked about. You must have goal orientation in order to identify a future career path or a future post-secondary possibility for yourself. You have to be responsible for your own actions in order to move through each of these tasks. You need to make sure that you're managing your time, because these tasks are in addition to the regular work that students are asked to do as part of their courses. And it does require teamwork and collaboration for them to put together some of the artifacts that are a part of their Naviance portfolio. Next slide, please. When we look at this year's class of 2021, we can see where the collective group of current seniors are at in terms of their completion of tasks. So every single senior has completed the first 4 of those tasks listed here on this chart. They've added career clusters to their list. They've completed their career cluster finder. They've completed a career key, and they've thought about what their own road for success after high school is. Many students, over 75 of them, have already completed their strengths finder. And you can see from there that there are additional percentages of students who have completed each of the different tasks. Now, as we look at this chart and we see that not everybody is at 100%, that should not cause any alarm. And that's because students are continuing to work with their counselors and with their teachers on these things. In fact, we know that high schools are engaging seniors in different events this month and next that are helping them complete some of these activities. And again, I'd like to emphasize that those habits of mind that are a part of our Goal 5 work are those habits of mind that are nurtured and further developed as students complete their high school and beyond plan in Naviance. And coupled with the ways in which students are navigating through each school day, each month, and each year, we know that our students are well on their way of developing and solidifying those habits of mind that we know are so essential and important. And Heather, I don't remember who's next. I think it might be Dave Wellington. Dave, it's yours.
Perfect. Could we have the next slide? And you can go ahead and scroll to the next one. This is a particularly important marker for us, one that we look at. It's very appropriate that it's one of the first pieces of data in terms of how we're doing. Success that our freshmen, our ninth graders have early on in their high school career is sets them on a path, and the number of credits that they collect literally puts them on track to graduation, but also the skills obviously that they're acquiring and the level of success that they are having and that they feel that they're having hopefully leads to success throughout their entire career. So this slide is particularly important to us. You can see in the top column the number of students earning 5.5 credits. This is the number of credits that we used to track. Now, of course, as students are able to take more classes, you can see that we've added the number of students earning 6 credits on the bottom section as well. And in both cases, we're seeing that trend headed in a very positive direction with the number of freshmen on track to graduate. Next slide. And the next slide. So last year, when we were looking at evidence or ways in which our system was providing opportunities for students to both acquire practical skills and have an eye to or a disposition towards their future life after high school, we identified some courses that seemed to fit that bill. As Chris pointed out earlier, quality education certainly translates to a quality of life, and thinking and preparation that students are doing and engaging in now translates to the thinking and action in the near and far term for our students. This isn't in any way a complete list. It's the list that we developed last year, so we wanted to bring it forward again this year. They were relatively recent courses that had been developed and offered students opportunities, deeper thinking in or skill development in things like international citizenship, local and global responsibility towards their environment, college preparation, communication in multiple spheres of influence, global and local economics, and obviously direct on-the-job skill development. So again, that acquisition of practical skills as well as disposition for life after high school. And as you can see, in the majority of cases, students have either maintained their enthusiasm for taking these courses, or in a few cases, a number of cases actually, they've increased enthusiasm for what they have to offer their present and their future selves. Next slide. And next person, I believe.
So good evening, this is Obi. This is my section. Obviously, as this measure says, we're going to be talking about data around graduating. So Siobhan, if you go to the next one. Here's our first slide that has some blue in it. And the blue is an indication, and just as a reminder that Dr. Reed and Heather talked about at the beginning, that these numbers will just go up as we kind of close out this month. So you'll notice here that we are, for all NSD schools, we're at a 94% graduation rate. And then just for our 4 comprehensive high schools, we're up to a 95.6% graduation rate. I would remind all of us to think about as we've continued to see our graduation rates climb, that the request for students to graduate, the request of students as they go towards graduation has gotten harder, including moving to 24 credits. And the other reminder as we think about this number is just that our students that leave our comprehensive high schools and go on to ATP after graduation count against our graduation rate. So those students that we know are still in our system and are doing great work over in our ATP program negatively impact our graduation rates. So it's just as we're thinking about what the numbers mean, to have that in mind. And then I would just, as we go through this section, this work is really done. We get to share it, and we're very excited about the data we have. The work is really done at the building level with the counseling teams and the teachers and the high school principals. And all of our schools take a very personalized approach to making sure that every student gets a chance to walk across the stage at graduation, so earn that diploma. Siobhan, if you go to the next one. So we had preliminary data for the class of 2020 on the previous slide. We don't get this data until after everything's closed out. So it'll be a little while until we have an update on this particular. So you saw last year, you would have seen the class of 2018 because we did this presentation at about the same time. This year, we're seeing class of 2019. I would also remind you, this is for all students. So if you're looking at how do the numbers match to the numbers we saw on the previous slide, this is the first column with all students in there. So you'll notice, if you look at the all student graduation rate was about 93.7, and that would match with our male and female graduation rates as well. And then Siobhan, if you go to the next one, please. This set of slides shows which percentage in each of those categories we just saw in the previous slide. So for that same graduating class, which percentage is counted as dropouts because we've lost them in our system over the course of their 4-year pattern. They may have moved out of the district and we didn't get a course request for them, and then the percent that are continuing. And that percent continuing is work we do to prevent that dropout rate. So you'll see, I'll talk about a program towards the end here, and you'll see our ATP program, how it impacts students receiving special education services, in a couple slides as well. But the left column is just those that are continuing, and then the right column is those that have dropped out. Siobhan, if you go to the next one. So this is same set of data, or same format for data, but a different group. So the first group was breaking down gender and race and ethnicity. This group is about program services. So you can see in the left-hand column whether they're English learners or homeless, and then their graduation rates. And again, when you look at our students with disabilities, one of the things impacting in there, and you'll be able to catch this on the next slide, is our students leaving our comprehensive high schools and go to the ATP program after their graduation year. Siobhan, you go to the next one, please. So here again, same format as the slide, the previous slide, or 2 slides ago. But what you'll notice, and again, when you look down at the bottom with students with disabilities, we have 15.7, percent continuing, and a lot of those again are that group that goes on to our ATP program, continuing with their. And then you also notice that our EL learners percent continuing is also relatively high. And the next one, please, Siobhan. So this slide is best if you read it horizontally. So you look at the class of 2020 or the class of 2021. And what you'll notice in the left column is that their 2019-20, how many credits they've earned towards graduation. And then as they go to 2021, so as we pulled the data going into this year, in all cases, well, except for the class of 2023, but in all other cases, the percent of students on track to graduate continues to go up. So this is again attributed to that work we see at the end when we have high graduation rates, and then the work that the counselors and high school staff and high school principals and assistant principals are doing to make sure that each child that misses credits is getting the credits they need. And then the class of 2023, obviously 100% of them are on track to graduate when they come in, because there's no requirement for them to have credits at the beginning of their 9th grade year. And so when they enter their 10th grade year, we would expect a little dip. What you should notice is they're a little higher than the class of 2022 as 10th graders. So again, opportunities to celebrate there as well. Next slide, please, Siobhan. And then one of our dropout retention programs are ways that we keep students engaged. I talked about ATP. This slide shows how we use Grad Alliance to retain students, and you can see over the years how many students we've had, and then the number of graduates that we've seen there. And we're not necessarily looking for students to graduate from Grad Alliance, because some of them will get back on track, and then we'll enroll them back in their comprehensive high schools too. But this is just one way that we continue to reach out and make sure students are engaged. This is our dropout re-engagement program, which leads me to Michael Tolley. Next slide, please, Siobhan.
Thank you, Obi. As you can see, the next section refers to decreased high school dropout rate. So Siobhan, if you can go to the next slide. As Obi just described, we're basically reporting on number of students the percentage of our seniors each one of these years who have left our system, and we don't have any records that their academic records have been requested from another school district. So that percentage is reflected here. As you could also note, the number is in blue for the 1920 school year, so we would anticipate that number improving. In other words, the percentage would be lower if the data continues to improve. And also you can see that this is the lowest it has been in the last 4 years. And in fact, we dropped not just a full percentage point, but over the last 5 years, it's gone down 2.6%. So we're going in the right direction, but that's reflective of also the fact that our graduation rate goes up, dropout rates tends to go down. So Siobhan, if you can go to the next slide. So this table gives you a little bit more specific information. As you can see, for the graduating class of 2020, which is in the right-hand column there, you can see the number of students who have left our system, and again, without having individual files requested from other districts. So that's what's reported there, those 46 students in those grades. But as also that Obi had referred to, the number of students who continue within our programming, our students attending ATP. So totaling altogether, that's the number of non-graduates that is reflected there at 89. Again, that number continues to go down as a result of the very intentional work that we see at our high schools. So our high school staff know every one of our students who are not on track to graduate and work very closely with those students and their families to meet their academic and social emotional needs. So again, this data is reflecting the work that has been going on within North Shore School District. So Siobhan, go to the next section, next slide. So the next set of information is referring to the increased percentage of students involved in activities aligned to their college career and or post high school plans. So if you go to the next slide, so here's reporting out on advanced placement coursework, and we think of advanced students participating in advanced placement courses is one indicator of their interest in their post-secondary success. This slide represents all of the students' participation in advanced placement within the district. As you can see in the upper left-hand corner, the enrollment in advanced placement courses is relatively flat, the 26, 25% over the last couple of years. And you also note there in the lower left-hand corner, it appears that the number of students actually taking advanced placement exams has gone down. But I would like to note that this past spring, advanced placement courses or exams were administered online, and students were given the option to either take the exam online or request a refund. And we did have about 348 students opt to receive a refund rather than actually take their exam. And those students, that represents about 436 exams that were not taken in response to that. So even though that data point indicates a decrease, the measures around students participating and thinking about their post-secondary, and we tend to see that going in the right direction. So this is advanced placement courses within North Shore School District. The next slide, if Siobhan goes to taking a look at another college level coursework in terms of International Baccalaureate. I believe Heather picks it up from here.
Yes, thank you, Michael. Another one of our programs that we have in North Shore is our International Baccalaureate program. That is a district-wide program. Students from all schools can choose to enroll in the IB program. It is housed at Inglemoor High School. The first slide that you're looking at is the slide from the class of 2018-19. And this slide would have been in your packet last year. So this, in other words, is just a repeat of last year's slide. And then we will show you the next slide, Siobhan, please, which is 2020. And as Mr. Tolley discussed about the strange year for AP, given our remote learning and our distance learning environment, there was also nothing usual for our IB students. Usually they sit for an exam, and they also do an internal assessment, and the International Baccalaureate Organization canceled the sit-down exams last spring, and our students were scored just on their internal assessment, and then they did some portfolio work, and then the teachers submitted the information to the IB organization along with a predicted class grade. And all of those components then went together to determine who would earn an IB diploma. So you can see some of the data on this slide is a little bit different than what we had on the prior slide. I will note that in the upper left-hand corner, we still had a pass rate of 90% students who did earn an IB diploma, and that exact number was 74 students that went ahead and took the challenge of doing the internal assessment and the portfolio work last spring in order to be considered to earn the IB diploma. And that was a 90% pass rate, 74 students. One other thing I will mention just moving forward, I think it's important to note that again, we're in a strange and unusual year, and we are in continuous contact, our IB coordinators are, with the International Baccalaureate Organization about the changes for 2021. And I will note that some of the adjustments that have already been made is the IB organization has looked at each of their courses and reduced the amount of content that students will be needing to cover during the 2021 school year. And they're also reducing the number of questions that will be asked on the exam portion. And still to be seen is whether we will have the exam portion or not in the spring, but certainly they are reducing some of the expectations around the internal assessment. But more information to come as we move closer towards the spring. And then I will reference just on the bottom of this slide in the right-hand corner, it is the percent of students taking IB classes. And that number continues to rise, as I know that the counselors and the teachers and the administrators at Inglemoor continuously are working with students and counseling them, having one-on-one meetings, encouraging them to stretch themselves, challenge themselves, and give them the confidence that they need to be successful in an IB course, and dipping their toe into those courses, as we know that that is an indicator also of post-secondary preparation. Next slide, please, Siobhan. Another one of our dual credit opportunities too is our career and technical education program. And we continue to see an increased growth in our student FTE of those courses. And I will mention that this particular slide here is a combination of middle school and high school student FTE. And the big jump, of course, we know was when we included 7 periods into our schedule at the high school. But the breakdown between middle school and high school is we have our middle school FTE is 184 and high school is 838. That does not mean head count, that is student FTE. A student may take just a semester CTE course. They may take a 3-hour auto tech course. They may take a 1-year course. So it's based on the FTE for our students in middle school and high school. Next slide, please, Siobhan. This is just a listing of the new course additions that we've added for the last 4-year time frame, beginning in 2017-18 school year, and then the planning stages for the 21-22 school year as well. Next slide, please, Siobhan. So another one of the data points that we use is what percentage of our high school students completed a dual credit course over time. And as you can see from the 2018 school year to the 2019 school year, there's not much difference in that percentage, nothing statistically significant. If you go to the next slide, Siobhan, we actually have it broken down by each grade level, and we have 2 years of data there. So these are the number of students that actually completed a dual credit course by grade, and in a minute you'll see the different types of dual credit offerings that this chart encompasses. But we have a student can take anywhere from their 9th grade to their 12th grade year, and so you can see that we have the number of students out of the number in that actual cohort in that given year. So our 12th grade students in 2017-18 had 85% had taken a dual credit course, and then increased to 86% in the next year. And again, this data we will have for the 2019-20 year in a couple of months once we get the final information from the state. All of this will be recalculated. Next slide, please, Siobhan. So here's our dual credit offerings by type. So again, 2 years of data. And we can see AP, CTE, dual credit, college in the high school, international baccalaureate, and running start. These are the programs. The state has 6 programs. The other one is the Cambridge program. We do not have Cambridge in our school district, but these are the courses that when we go to the OSPI report card, we're able to see the different types of dual credit opportunities, and then it gives us the percentages of students enrolled during those academic years. Next slide, please, Siobhan. The last measure that we have in Goal 5 is the increased percentage of high school graduates entering college without need for remedial classes. And next slide, please, Siobhan. And these next 4 slides are actually slides that Dr. Reed sent us that were included in the presentation that Dr. Stephen Gehring gave to the regional assistant superintendents last spring, also to the ATM, the leadership group, and then each of the regional assistant superintendents have met with our high school administrative teams and counseling teams to go through a great deal of information. What you're seeing tonight is just one portion of the entire slide presentation, but you heard Dr. Bigelow already speak to the importance of students being prepared, graduating, and then enrolling in post-secondary education. And the work that we are beginning to engage in with our high schools and around our students of color enrolling in more of our advanced course offerings will be a direct impact to this work here in this data point that you're seeing now. So what we're seeing, the first slide is 2018. And you can see that the North Shore School District continues to have a very high number of students enrolling in post-secondary education, more so than the state and the nation. That's a total of 78% on that last column. And we know the importance of students achieving post-secondary success just for their greater potential for salary earnings and greater potential for citizenship and lifelong happiness. Next slide, please, Siobhan. This one is hard to see, but so this one is around persistence and retention rates once students are in college. And again, Dr. Gehring presented this data to us. We continue to be above the state average for persistence and retention. And you can see both a two-year college on the left, and then below that would be the 4-year institutions. Next slide, please. So this is what the measure actually speaks to, is students taking pre-college coursework upon leaving North Shore School District prior to enrolling in a 2-year and 4-year institutions. And we have this information in another slide coming up on where we show trend data over time for our 4U universities. But you can see the percentage there comparatively to the state, again, is lower, requiring students to take pre-college, whether it would be English or math. And of course, our goal is to reduce that number, to continuously reduce that number that students have to enroll in those courses. We want to leave them prepared. We want them to leave us prepared, ready for college, to go right into 100-level coursework. And so we need to continuously look to reduce those numbers. Next slide, please, Siobhan. And this one was just a glimpse of 8 years after graduation. Almost 2/3 of North Shore students have some post-secondary degree, compared to less than half of the residents statewide. So that is a pretty impressive data point that Dr. Gehring provided to us for our North Shore students. And the last slide that you have is the one I mentioned that gives you a trend data, and this is from the off the OSPI report card and then the ERDC Center, and we just have the 4-year institutions listed here, but it gives you the percentage of students in each of those graduating cohorts that enrolled in pre-college courses, both English and math. And we just have the four-year institutions here. This is the same data that was on Dr. Gehring's slide 2 slides ago. We don't have the 2-year data on this particular slide. So, but this does give you the 4-year look. And that concludes the data presentation of our presentation this evening. The last slide is Q&A. So we are prepared to answer any questions you may have. And if we're not sure, we can certainly get the answer to you for your Friday board brief. But I'll turn it back to either Dr. Reed or President Swain.
Thank you, Heather. Appreciate that. Thanks for all the excellent information. So I guess we'll open up to questions unless Dr. Reed has a quick follow-up before we jump in.
No, just the follow-up that the data, this particular goal data evolves. As we indicated, it will continue to come in. It continues to have a couple measurements, I think, that we have really struggled to find good objective quantitative data on, but we're getting closer. I think Dr. Gehring's work has really enabled us, because he's been able to look out and use data about our graduates, has enabled us to really better understand some of our work in this particular goal area. So I think at this point, what I'd appreciate is some discussion on the part of the board, and I'll try to respond to questions as best I can, or I will call on one of the Razes to pinch hit if we need to. Kind of have some organization to all of us on the same call.
So thanks, Dr. Reed. Maybe I can jump in if that's okay.
Sure.
So one of the things that I thought was neat in kind of looking at the data and the fact that we had multiple years is sometimes, the data just kind of hovers and just kind of goes up, down, up, down, up, down. A lot of these keys that we're tracking are improving over year. So I thought that was really excellent. The high graduation rate around 95%, the dropout rate looking like it's going to be around 3% once we get all the numbers in. Great progress on both of those key metrics that we all discussed and set up quite some time ago. Love the fact that we extended the CTE offerings. And I think the increase of students that take classes probably speaks to a little bit of the fact that we're adding some interesting classes that students really are interested and passionate about. So I thought that was great as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Kogan. I want to comment too, one of the data points the board has been relentless on is the 9th grade on-time credit rate. And I will say that the original work that Scott Like, who's now an assistant principal at Bothell, did to help set up a district structure for monitoring that and supporting that has really been, it's been sustained. And our staff, our counselors, teachers, principals at the high schools really have bought into the need. If we can get our 9th graders through credit ready, they're twice as likely to graduate on time. So we feel like that work is critical, particularly since we moved 9th out of junior highs to our high schools. That transition had the potential, had we not tended to that, to really tip our graduation data. So I really appreciate the work of our regional assistant superintendents, of Dr. Bigelow and Dr. Malloy as well, in keeping that focus on 9th grade, because we know how important that is to the support, the bottom of the pyramid for graduation. So just can't emphasize that data point enough.
Well, if I could jump in on that, Dr. Reed, since you focused on the 9th grade on track status, which, as you said, is so terribly important. First, terrific presentation, you guys. Giving me numbers is just like feeding me candy. So I really appreciate all the information packed into the slides. I'm looking at, I think it's slide 10, which is the students who completed 9th grade on track. And in multiple slides after this one, you've provided the demographics of the students who are graduating, those who are graduating on time. I was wondering about the same kind of information for our 9th grade students who are on track. I so appreciate seeing the numbers go up like this. And I think David pointed, or maybe it was Obi pointed out that we have a jump in the number of credits required at the end there. So that contributes to part of it, but still a great increase. Do we have some demographic data on that as well?
Some of the demographic data I know we're still pulling because we're not necessarily required to report it to the state.
Right.
Not that that's the only reason we should collect it, but it does. I know I spoke with the team this morning and they're pulling that together. We should have something for the Friday brief, if not this week, for sure by next week.
Great. Perfect. Thank you.
Yep.
And to kind of add on to that, I don't know because of what kind of data we get from the International Baccalaureate test information and the AP test information, but if there's any way to get some disaggregated demographic, well, and program data there too, to see if there's any trends in terms of access to those programs, that would be really great. I have to say, I'm so excited about all the work everyone is doing with Dr. Gehring. I mean, I think that's kind of a bullseye in terms of really taking a deep dive into really strategizing at the high school levels. We know people work so hard and have for years and years really made those personal contacts to help the graduation rate. And I feel like the work with Dr. Gehring just brings it a level deeper, right? It's just taking everyone's passion for helping our students and giving them information to help them do it even smarter, right? And helping back up all that drive with really targeted information that helps them be so purposeful. I think it's so exciting. So I'm so glad that you all have begun that work. That's great. I have a set of kind of ponderings in terms of how this spring transpired with the class of 2020. And so how it might have affected some of this data. And as we've often talked about kind of learning with this built-in case study we happen to be living right now. And I don't know if there's a specific takeaway I have yet, but I'm just kind of curious how our grading policy at high school this spring with the pass and complete, how that played out, how it looks like our graduation rate and dropout rates are looking great. But it sounds like, kids are still wrapping up the incomplete coursework. But I'm just kind of wondering on people's takeaway from that.
So thank you, Director Cast. I want to share that I think anecdotally, more kids stayed engaged without a punitive grading scale, if that makes sense.
That does make sense.
Spring.
Wow.
I will look to Heather. Would you like to speak to that, or would you like to call on somebody on your team to speak to that?
I'll start, and I can always phone a friend if I need to, or text a friend, as you would say, Dr. Reed. We have all talked about the incompletes, though, today. And over the last 2 months, it seems like it's been an ongoing topic as we are working with our building administrators to reduce those numbers of incompletes and eventually get them to zero by the end of the first semester. As of today, I will say that, yes, the engagement factor that Dr. Reed spoke to in the spring with no punitive grading attached probably helps some of the students get their grades, whether it was an A or a B. So certainly something to consider as we're moving forward. As of today, we have a total, I'll give you a numerical number. In the grades 10, 11, and 12, so our current sophomores, juniors, and seniors, we have a total of 132 students who have an incomplete still on their record. In the 9th grade class currently, so they would have received an incomplete in their 8th grade year, so it would have been in one of their world language or advanced math courses. We have 8 students across the system, so 8 9th graders. We also had a number of seniors or graduates who received incompletes last year who they've graduated, we've taken care of them, they are continuing perhaps, or they have moved on to something different. But the number of 132 is our current 10th, 11th, and 12th graders. And what we are, what I've been proceeding with, and like I said, by the end of first semester, is that every student is meeting with their counselor. The administrators also are meeting with them, and they're devising a plan. What does that plan look like to get your incomplete off of your transcript? And that could be completing an artifact. That was one of the options that the state gave us, was a student could complete an artifact or something reflective about their experiences last spring in that course. And so they're working with the teacher to figure out what that is. We also know that the state is allowing students to take the grade in their next course sequence and then apply that grade back to their second semester grade last year. So if I'm a math student and I received an incomplete, I can take my next level of math, and whatever grade I get at the end of first semester can then apply to my grade last spring semester. And then I also know that we have teachers that are working individually one-on-one with a student perhaps, or two students who may receive incompletes, and working with them to determine what is necessary to change that incomplete to a grade. And as I mentioned, by the end, after we close out the first semester of this year, we should be able to have all of those incompletes off of the transcripts, provided all the students completed their work successfully. And we will then continue to monitor if not.
Oh, that's super helpful. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And just one more question, kind of again in the realm of this unique time we're living in. I know that a lot of the CTE classes have a lab work type component that's required in order to get those credits, whether it be the nursing academy needing certain amount of practical hours, and AP biology has a requirement. I'm sure there's several. So, but how can we, I mean, how is this kind of looking for this year? I know last year, a lot of the students, I'm sure probably most of the students had enough hours before we had to go remote. But this year, since we're looking at a significant amount of time with remote, I'm just kind of wondering what the thoughts are there.
I can speak to a couple of your questions, Amy, a couple of the things you mentioned, and then we may need to get additional information. I did check with Damon Schuneman, who's our Director of Career and College Readiness in our CTE programs, and all of the courses, auto technology, our nursing, health and science nursing program, construction academy, robotics, all of them have an online component, of course, during this time. But they've all connected with a online partner who is providing them support from industry partners. So for example, our auto technology has partnered with our longtime supporters, Foundry 10, and they are providing kits for our auto tech students to be able to work at home on some of these skills and necessary tasks that they need to monitor and they need to master throughout their program. So they're working with those partners to do that. Same thing with our health and science nursing. They have a online partner and they're providing an online program. David Schuneman did say the nursing students are conducting practice and demonstration of skills at home using stuffed animals while being observed by their instructors and peers. And I thought that was kind of interesting. I haven't asked more about that yet.
I kind of love it.
And our Construction Academy, which is our program at Bothell High School, they're pairing with what's our industry partner is Pitsco, and they are providing us with take-home kits that are true scale house framing kits with 3D home and CAD modeling. So there's lots of things happening in that area to give the students as close to, well, it's not as close, but give them something that's like what they might experience out in the industry field. I can't speak to the AP biology course. I know you mentioned that specifically, but I can get information about that for you.
Okay, and that's very helpful. Thank you. It's interesting. Again, so grateful for all the partnerships that we're able to benefit and our students are able to benefit from, and just how creative people are. So thank you for that. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Well, First of all, I think relentlessly focused on ninth grade on track rates was a very kind way of putting our laser-like focus as a board on that. And so thank you so much. It was delightful to see that those numbers have are back up to where they were before we moved our ninth graders from the junior highs to high schools. So that was fabulous to see, as was our graduation rates, particularly in the different program areas, the huge increase in a number of those subgroups that have tended to be concerning. To see those up into some very high percentages was super exciting. And I know that we've got counselors and administrators and staff working so hard that have made that happen. I'm wondering if we have a sense of if the seventh period day contributed to the change in both our ninth grade on track and graduation rates.
I think that it's a possibility. I'm going to pivot and let's see any of the Razes, Obadiah or Michael. Looks like Michael, you're unmuted. Would you like to take that one?
Well, it's been 2 years with that. So as you know, graduation rates is cumulative over a 4-year period. And so I would imagine, yes, increased course taking opportunities for students, and definitely does have an impact. Has it had an impact already? Possibly. We would have to do a little bit more data analysis to actually answer that question. But again, the overall goal of increasing credit earning opportunities for students with the 7-period program, as you know, is not just counting credits, it's also increasing ability for students to take courses that they're interested in and that they stay engaged in school more and have, as a result, a better chance of completing, not just graduating from high school, but actually being prepared for and continuing post-secondary opportunities. So I would think that's true, but we would need to analyze the data to make sure it's true.
Michael, I know Woodinville High School, you work with the East region. They actually took a group of their students with incompletes and put them in a class to support them. So if we hadn't had a 7-period day, we wouldn't have had an open period to do that, I know. So I think it's provided some supports and frameworks as well, which we are grateful that we have today that we might not have had a couple of years ago.
That's true.
Yeah, I think if we can maybe quantify that a little bit, that will be helpful to share with our community and to thank them for their support, because it's certainly without that levy, we wouldn't have been able to do that. So it's a nice data point that we can share to show the positive difference they made. And then my second question, so I want to celebrate for a second and then pivot to, and I loved hearing Heather's comment about making sure our students are going on to higher ed. We know 10 years ago, so many of the high school diploma jobs were lost and did not come back. And we're hearing that the jobs lost, many of the ones lost just in the last 6 months, the manufacturing ones won't be coming back, that they will be roboticized. So it all the more, it's an imperative goal. I'm curious what we are doing. Applying to college is a confusing process, even when you grew up speaking the language and had parents that had experienced and gone through the process themselves. All the more it's overwhelming if you're a first generation trying to figure out our applying to college system. And then you add in a year where it's very different. What, if anything, are we doing to work with our first generation students to help them understand the changes to the process this year and maybe stay connected to them as they make decisions to maybe take a gap year? I know in my household, if I had a child that opted to take a gap year, he would eventually
end up back in school, but I worry about some of the ones where college isn't part of their family background, that if they choose to take a gap year, we may lose them altogether.
So great question, Director Hayes. And I'm going to look at Obadiah or David, since we haven't heard from them as a follow-up. Obadiah, do you have some thoughts? And I also want to mention, Director Hayes, that during our recent Inglemoor High School plan report, Principal Adam Desautel showed us a unique feature in YouTube where all their teachers created videos for their welcome back night and their curriculum night, which could then be translated into multiple languages just by hitting a feature on YouTube, which we thought made tremendous possibilities, kind of blew all kinds of possibilities open for communication. But Obadiah, do you want to speak to that, please?
Yeah, I think there's a few things that I would answer. One is all of our high schools have financial aid, already had a financial aid night. They have senior parent / student nights to talk about college graduation. They have all have some form of college essay review, whether it's being done directly in their English classes or it's being offered and teachers are being paid extra to come in and review college essays. And so those are pretty standard practices. Because of the COVID experience, we've also had, and this would happen as well. I don't want to say it wouldn't happen normally, but it's just difficult to do. But all the high schools, their counseling team and their administrative team are monitoring which students are taking advantage of those and then reaching out to the students that aren't and having one-on-one conversations with those students and their families. So it's connecting in and just really monitoring and making sure that everybody has some level of contact by the middle of next month. And so really trying to engage them on a very personal level on that for all of our seniors. At North Creek High School and Inglemoor High School, we have the AVID program, and that's really about targeting first generation students and making sure that they are engaged starting in their 9th grade year, or even in the Inglemoor pathway at Kenmore starting in 6th and 7th grade years, but starting very early on, engaging and making sure they're doing all the things to get them ready for college. I think your question around gap year students is a good question for us to go back to high school teams and say, now, we may have seen an increased number of students taking a gap year, and particularly, as you said, highlighting those first generation students who may think, well, not this year, I'll do it next year. And then nobody's there to kind of hold their hand through it. So I think that's a good challenge for us to go back to our high school teams with.
Thank you.
I just have a couple of questions. It appears from the slide on Naviance that we're utilizing that program much better than we did a number of years ago, just from my own kids' perspective and seeing what was involved. It looks like there are a lot more steps involved that you're requiring the kids to go through. And so I just wondered, did someone have a comment on like how we're utilizing Naviance differently or in a better way than we have?
So I'm going to, since we haven't heard from David much, David, do you or Heather want to take that one?
Heather knows that she'll probably end up taking that one because as I'm just coming out of the elementary world, I've recently got my password and I've started surfing around Naviance to actually figure it out. I was also impressed as you were, as we were talking as a RAS team, not just what was available, but what was expected and the way in which our counselors and our OISs are using that to get kids thinking about that pathway visioning, I guess, for lack of a better term. Where do they want to go and what are the steps that they need to take to get there, and then actually providing an opportunity, or shall we say an expectation, for them to actually take a number of those steps and demonstrate that they've done so. Heather would have to talk about whether or not that's historically or traditionally how it's been used.
Thanks, David.
I'll just add on to what David said, that the the OISs, our occupational information specialists, along with our counselors at the high school, continue to look at the tasks, to revise, to see how do we deliver these tasks to our students and ensure that they are getting the instruction necessary to complete the tasks and also completing them before they graduate. I think there has been more of an intentional focus on this in the last 2 years. Thinking back to what you said, President Swain, and that we continue to refine and revise how we deliver this information. And even now in our time of remote learning, whereas it was easy, it wasn't easy, but it was intentional, where we would call the seniors or the juniors into the Career Center. We would deliver the information in totality and help them go through it 4 or 5 times a year. Now we're having to be a little bit more creative on how that information is delivered this year, as we do have the reduced time for students who, when they're with their teachers, and so going through a class may not be the right avenue, but how do we be creative and explore different options, such as using asynchronous time and the Wednesday times and the office hours. So we are continuing to work and refine moving forward for this year specifically.
That's great. Yeah, I know just from my learning about Naviance over the last few years, the program itself has a lot of options and a lot of depth. I think it's just taken us a little bit of time to learn it ourselves and to get it out there to the kids. So it's great that you're still pushing on it, and the list of stages was really good to see. My other question was, only other question was on the, we've talked about this before in other discussions on the 8 years after graduation, degree completion. If we could get maybe some more in-depth information, and maybe Dr. Gehring already has that on where the kids that are not completing a 2-year or associate degree or any kind of a certificate, that's pretty flat line, 10% kind of trailing down to 8%. It would just be good to know, if we can, who those kids are, and did they make it halfway through community college? Was it just a dip your toes in for a course or two and they just didn't like it? And then also it would be nice to know where our running start kids, how they end up, like what percentage of our running start kids actually complete an associate's degree. Just so we can make better sense of that low completion percentage would be very helpful. I think that's some work we could probably focus on.
Thanks, President Swain. I think we can go back with that direction and make sure we drill even deeper.
Thank you.
If I could follow up with a quick question about Naviance. I'm just, I guess, curious. I know it's got to be a lot more difficult this year, and certainly the end of last year, but do we know where we are with respect to getting all of the students to get through it? I mean, are they all completing Naviance by the end of their senior year?
It is a graduation requirement, Director McGordy, if they don't,
Okay.
don't graduate. So
Okay, wasn't sure about that.
there's a huge
Okay.
carrot there.
Okay.
But Heather, can you speak to Director McGordy's question in terms of our seniors on track to finishing what we would expect, since their junior year was somewhat abridged last spring?
Yes, there's definitely more work to be done this year than maybe in the years prior when we had the students with us. So as the seniors are going through this year, like I said, we're going to have to be more intentional on how and when they complete these tasks and getting them ready to go to complete their high school and beyond plan. I know that Director Schooneman, Career and College Readiness Director Schooneman was meeting with the OISs today to discuss that and to kind of map out what the plan looks like for the year for ensuring those students can meet that. They need to meet the requirement. Like Dr. Reed said, that's a graduation requirement. So we've got to figure out every way to get them there. I do know that even with the spring last year at the near the end, in the end of May and first week of June, that at each of the high schools, when the students were coming by to drop off textbooks or to drop off their items, turn things in, we were still in the midst and height of COVID right then, and we still are now, but they had a table set up that said high school and beyond plan, and the counselors were there, and the kids had to come over, and they were working with each of those students from a distance to help get them. They had computers set up and everything because it is a requirement. So we needed to help get them through.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Just on Naviance, what might be interesting is if you could give each board member a link and an account so that we could go through it ourselves and kind of just get through it. It's been a few years since going through it with kids, but if anybody would like one, maybe send an email to Dr. Reed. Probably be helpful to give some more perspective on what it actually is and then all the different options.
That's a great idea, President Swain. I honestly, as I was listening to the questions, a high school and beyond plan when the entire world's economic structure and occupational structure is reinventing itself. At the same time, we're asking kids to craft a plan to enter into that world beyond high school. It's really an interesting time in our history.
Very true. And I think it's important that, on one hand, it's intimidating because the world's changing so quickly. On the other hand, we want to make sure kids they don't feel discouraged, right? Because part of the exploration is just moving forward in some direction. So I'm sure our counselors are having to deal with that and encouragement and moving kids forward. Any other, we're past our time now. We have a 7 o'clock board meeting. Any final questions before we adjourn?
President Swain, maybe just a quick comment. Looking at all this data, goal 5, we say we want success for each and every student, which I love that we have that kind of focus. But I do want to just call out 95% graduation rate is something that almost every school district would love to be able to achieve. That's a really wonderful milestone. So I wanted to thank everybody for all their hard work. It's a lot of work to get that kind of an achievement.
Thank you, Director Hogan.
I also want to say that getting it and sustaining it, because that means that we're putting systems in place and the folks supporting those systems are working their tails off right now.
Mm-hmm. All right. Thank you, staff. Thank you, everyone, for your time and all your hard work as usual. We really appreciate it. So, Dr. Reed, unless you have anything else to say.
Well, I'm just contemplating the new discovery of water on the moon, and I'm not sure how that connects to goal 5, but you never know, right?
There you go. Excellent. All right. Well, thanks again, everyone. I'll call this meeting adjourned, and we'll see you in about 13 minutes.